Simplify the Podcast, Season 3. This is Hassan. I'm your host. Today, we're running it back. We have our distinguished guest, Nina Evans, author, businesswoman, financial advisor, finance coach, traveler. So she's here to speak about her book, also to discuss a few other points about travel, even being a minority group within an area that is billion plus majority. Mm-hmm. So we have a couple of things to cover today. Again, I appreciate you coming back. We had a very small technical issue to which we had to reschedule the recording, but we came back to do it again. She's in TSU hoodie. I'm still in Fila. This hasn't changed too much, right?
Right.
Still in velour. I just said I'm just going to keep up with the same feeling, right? Well, okay. So let's dive. Okay. I tend to observe things from maybe 2 or 3 different angles. I need to find out who my friends know. I need to find out what my friends are doing. And then I look at the strangers, just for the sake of, okay, is there something else out here that I should be trying to find for compelling subject matter, interest bracket, all of that. And then you publish a book. Now I could have got you on here about the financial coaching, which we will talk about, but the book was, I'm into authors now. I don't know why. So I said, well, let me try to get the book first and make sure this is on, in target line. Let me read it. And when I read it, kind of blew me away. We have a lot of similarities. So I just wanted to highlight you.
The book is called This Means More. It's Bigger Than Me. And I wrote the book because during the pandemic, I had just come back from China. I was trying to figure out what was going on with my life. I had expected to be abroad for years, came back within 9 months, and I did not know what was left or what was next for my life. And so and as I started to reflect back over my life, I really started to see that there were many different pieces, there were many different puzzle pieces of my life that were coming together, and they really shape who I am and define who I am. And so that's what I have in my book. I walk through my life. I walk through how each chapter has meant more, and how I've seen the bigger picture. And then I encourage others to take inventory of their own life, to really see their life and see it in a different light, because we see it in different, we tend to focus on silos, and not take a step back and really look at the bigger picture of, yes, this season was hard, but when I look at the grand scheme of things and I look at the bigger picture of my life, it fits. It was necessary for me to go through that. Moments of pain has now turned into purpose. And so I am excited that all of that is in the book. Some of it is really deep. Some of it is light and fun. But all of that is who I am. And so I didn't want to hide the hard parts. I wanted to just to show it all, because people can look at your social media, they can look at your life and say, wow, you've traveled this, and they think that you have this grand, shiny life. But really, if you really get to know me and you see, right, we've all been through stuff. We've all gone through hard things. So this is my journey, the hard parts, the good parts, all of it.
Okay. So, 2 things. Let's stay on the book for now.
Okay.
Because I really want to kind of express this in a way and focus on it. But you said 2 things: silos, and seasons. Those are 2 things that resounded, and then pain and purpose. Let's talk about silos, because I literally just had a conversation with a person 3 days ago about that, which essentially is, where I feel we as a people have a pain point that no one really talks about, is that we collectivize in very small pockets, right? So we play to each other's strengths, but the way our community works now isn't the same as what it did in the 70s and the 80s, right? I also have a theory that that's because there's less stress within the communities. Now, there is a lot of stress. It is not the same thing as what happened pre-civil rights or during the crack era, Reaganomics. That was different. I've had elders, my father even said, it used to be a time where you couldn't even call for authorities in the neighborhood because it would be a no-no. It wouldn't be something that you would do. So the neighborhood became a silo. it policed itself. It conducted things differently within its own fishbowl.
Right.
Right. That's good and bad.
Right.
It's good and bad. So you're speaking on the silo of the chapters of your life being the experiences that you have to go through.
Right.
Not to talk about this part of the book too much, because I want you listeners to buy it, right? So I want to, but I wanted to touch on this because I read it, and I understand that now for clarity. That the silo that you're referring to is the experience of your life that we would consider, like you mentioned, childhood, then adolescence, then adulthood. And you have compartmentalized those.
Mm-hmm.
Now I follow you. So you've compartmentalized those into these experiences, which of course you've documented, right? But also you survived them.
Right.
And I use that word specifically based on what's in the book,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you talk about your life story in a way that you called it a quick read. It's a compelling read. Granted, it's 100 pages plus, but I had to read it 3 times. It's such a wow moment for me, but now unfortunately, I'm becoming biased on it because I relate to it so much now, reading it again. It's like, this is half me,
Right.
which is why I'm pleased that we were able to highlight it the way that we have.
So when I say a season of my life, I'm, saying those when I was the partying adult, right? And then I had a season where different journeys of therapy,
We'll get to that.
and then a different season of what I call growth. And so those are the different seasons that I'm referring to. And within a year, I can be going through different seasons, just
Sure.
like the weather is changing for different seasons. And I think life mirrors that in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it's all, again, based on our experiences, based on how we see things, how we view it, our perspective on them. But all of those, so there could be multiple seasons
Sure.
within.
In the respect of relationship building, I won't dive into that. Like, we'll save that for another episode,
Yeah.
right? Now, you do talk about this in your book, though.
Mm-hmm.
You do talk about, how the aspects of what you saw in a person at the time, right? What you needed from them at the moment and what you thought you needed, the dependencies of an individual that you're with, even not wanting to leave them when you have opportunities in front of you. And I respect that. So I won't split the hair when we start to do the dualities of what season is by comparison to that,
Right.
but another time. That's we'll to be continued that one. So when it comes down to your life story in the book, not to give a lot away, you do talk about the origin, essentially your origin story, which takes you from West Texas, small town values, right? Mm-hmm. Father being a truck driver, mother taking care of the children. How many siblings with you?
It was a total of 5 of us.
5 siblings in a household. Small summary, and you give me the nod when I'm telling way too much, right? So the small summary in that story, though, is that there was a rift between you observing what was happening with your parents, in the parenting structure, how it affected the children, right? Dealing with the way your father was in but not in, and
Right.
but the things that he taught you structurally as well. So you took notes from that also, but it's not as though it didn't create a bit of a rift
Right.
with both of them, and even some distance between your siblings. I just covered about 3 chapters worth of stuff right there, right? That's my small summary. I did, though, for the sake of the discussion, wanted to talk about, as much as you want, the nature of your father and your relationship, your mother's relationship, and then your siblings' relationship.
Yeah.
We'll just frame those that way. So with him being in the household the way that he was, how did that impact your relationship with him?
So I am daddy's girl to the core. So I'm the youngest of the 5. And so, and then the daddy's girl, I was also the numbers girl. So me and my dad, we have a very close relationship. And to the extent that I can, now talk to him as a friend. But growing up, right, he was a truck driver. He was not at home during the week, and then he was at home on the weekends. And then our weekends were spent as a family, having a good time. We were the party house. I learned to count because watching my dad and his friends play dominoes, and my dad would taught me how to count because I would count dominoes for him.
Okay.
And so I'm a daddy's girl to the core. Now, I've also been able to express to my dad certain things, right? That certain hard things that were hard for him to hear, about how I feel, about how some things had transpired in my childhood. But me and my dad have that kind of relationship where we can have those conversations, right?
Sure.
The easy conversations and the tough conversations.
Sure.
So,
I think that's good, but that was a road. It definitely took some time for you to get there.
yes.
And additionally, there was a road that you took with your mother. So that relationship, as documented, right, in the book, that became a separate entity on its own.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the relationship with my mom is different, right? Typically in the average family, the mothers are the foundation. They're the rock. They're the ones that hold everybody together. They're the ones that everybody looks to and say, Mom, what would you do? But there are a small few of us, because it's not I know, actually I'm learning that maybe more people relate to my story than what I know. But that wasn't my experience with my mom. I think that she did the best that she could. I think that she had her own trauma that she was living through. And so she just didn't know how. And so unfortunately, we don't have the mother-daughter bond that, you would think that you would have with, or that I know, people have with their moms.
Sure.
We don't have that. And it's one that I've had to it's one that I've had to grieve.
Sure.
Had to grieve that, that may not ever happen. And so, you just kind of have to accept that, and move forward. Now, still talk to my mom. We call each other, we'll call. We don't talk often, but when we do, we'll catch up. And, I've just had to be okay with that, with where that is. For me, it's been trust, it's been boundaries, things like that. For me, operating as a healthy adult, I've had to make some decisions to say, I have to have these boundaries in my life. And if you don't want to operate in them, that's okay. Then you
Be over there.
you have to be arm's length.
Sure.
And so that's where we are today. And, I thankfully, and what I call it out in the book is, while I did not get what I needed from her, there have been people who have been placed and brought into my life who have been able to nurture me in those ways. And so I'm so grateful for that.
Like a surrogacy. Yeah.
Yeah, so grateful for that. So when I talk about community in my book, I'm talking about my friends, but I am also talking about some of the other benefits that have come along with having those friends and having their parents step in for me.
I appreciate you saying it, because even though everyone may not go through the entirety of what you went through, there are very much aspects of what you go through that people are going to relate to. As you speak, and I read it, but like as you speak, I'm saying, yep, been through that. Yep, feel that way, right?
Yeah.
I think, there's no silver lining in that, honestly, because you did say it correctly, in my opinion, to say that, you grieve it. Because it's not a nuclear format. It's not the format that one would expect. Definitely doesn't happen outside of our community very often, where you see that level of strife between both units. Right? There's a distance with one, there's a separate or a different distance with the other, and you have to reconcile that. You can reconcile with one wholly, where the other one is still kind of, right. And maybe there's some clinical, studies that can show where, because that's a trauma situation.
Right.
So where one would relate to the traumatic instance from the person, being that that's a mother as opposed to a father, being that you are a female as opposed to a male. Like it's,
right.
There's a bond there that doesn't break, but it does get redefined.
Right.
I'm speaking in prose, but it's true as you've documented, right? I think for an artist, though, the silver lining that I wanted to mention is that for an artist, this makes for very much good content because you get to purge,
Right.
but you also get to find out something about yourself in creating a literary work. So now you know, A, I can, and B, what else do I need to talk about? You know, what else is there? But good on you. And I know that wasn't without therapy, and that wasn't
Yes.
without a lot of difficult conversations, which we will talk about.
Right.
So in the third portion of that, with the book, in terms of your upbringing side, because the book kind of falls, in my opinion, your book falls into three areas, right? It falls into how you grew up and the conditions to which you grew up and how that affected you, the career path you chose, and then the blessings that you decided to take along the way.
Yeah.
Am I missing a part of the book?
Oh, that's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put
If
it.
you need an agent. Okay, so then the thing that I did want to dive into then would be, very briefly though, because there is content in the book that I believe that people need to read to understand fully about this. So the sibling dichotomy that you had, was interesting, but you also dealt with loss, right? To which that loss would have essentially been the glue of your family.
Right.
Again, you give me the nod, right? But if you allow me to summarize it, because out of respect and also out of the fact that it's in the book, that's not really a part that we really want to dive into, right? But with your siblings growing up that way, the one that you looked up to the most would have been your brother, to whom which you did lose tragically. And the process of that did create a bit of an uprooting of the family structure. And I think you said it the best way is that people have to grieve differently. So they did, and you just never kind of came back to it as a whole.
Right.
Is that a good summary?
Yeah, that's a very good summary. Very, very, very good.
You can tell I've done this before, right? All right. So, but I'd like to leave it there because there's 2 chapters at least in the book where you touch on this and you go deeper into how this affected you psychologically, how it affected the family, which I think is important. I can't summarize as beautiful as you wrote it, so I believe deserves a lot more credit and a lot more attention. And again, I would like for this to be a purchase that you see much higher than what you already have, which you've already seen some numbers. But I want to make sure that you have the availability to talk about that more than me.
Yeah.
But I would like to ask you this. So pain to purpose, right? Clearly that's a pain point. The purpose, though, where did you see a loss like that becoming an application of where your purposes could be?
So, I was 16 years old when I lost my brother. He was 20 at the time. And for years I avoided grieving, avoided dealing with that loss. I just suppressed it in the back of my mind. And then it was literally 12 years later, I looked up and I was, on high blood pressure medication and dealing, just frustrated. And I found myself angry a lot. And I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to carry this just frustration and so it was a matter of you got to deal with these emotions. You got to, find a different way to channel them. And so once I started going through therapy and started getting some coping skills from therapy to help, manage those feelings that I have, then I started to be able to accept, right, that my brother was no longer here. And then the opportunity came, what kind of person was he? How can I carry out his legacy through the things that I do? And so my brother was a great, great, great person. And so I've always tried to be, kind and nice, not because of, that's because who I am and how I was raised, but it's just knowing that he was always a light. Everywhere he went, he was always a light. And so knowing that I can be a light for somebody else, he was always encouraging somebody else. I can be an encourager to somebody else. And so that is one of the things with the book is I want to encourage people to really take that deeper dive into their life. I know, again, some parts are going to be hard to go back and sit down and look at, but it's needed and it's necessary so that you can free yourself internally from some things, and then you can go out and then help somebody else, right? And so now that I've experienced grief, I can help somebody else who's going through grief.
Sure. I feel like that's a perfect segue, though, in order to discuss exactly how your book is formatted. One of the benefits of this book, just my personal opinion, because I've read maybe 3 of them that have a reflection point in them, and it's new to me, and maybe it's just because of my selection of this type of book format. You know, there's fiction, nonfiction, self-help, things like that. Perhaps I haven't read enough self-help or self-reflection books to see that this format is common, but I found it amazing. And the reason why I highlight that is based on what you just said, is because you do challenge the reader to look into themselves, but you also do something else. So you discuss every chapter has a discussion or your outline of how this was for you. That's your story. So it gives that story within that chapter. At the end of that chapter, you do give either a Bible verse or a complete further explanation of the parable in the Bible, which now, spoiler alert, allows you to say that your journey is rooted in your faith.
Absolutely.
Used to say that was rooted in the church, but that means you kind of belong to one entity, and that's not the case with you. But the faith in itself carried on throughout the entirety. I want to touch on that in a little bit too. But the way the format works, again, is that your chapter is dedicated to your journal of your story, but then it also gives the parable within the Bible verse, and then you ask, what does this mean to you? And it blew my mind. It blew my mind. Now, again, as I have some similarities in terms of the stories that you have, and I've seen that in my own self-reflection, to be asked what it meant to me, I was like, oh, that's a perfect way to end this chapter. Now we can go into the next chapter feeling as though that's a task that's going to be a part of the book. Fantastic formatting, by the way. So outside of the origin story, right? In addition to this, you do talk about the career path that you followed, which ends up being accounting, right? And you said that you were a numbers girl from the jump. So accounting would probably have been no surprise to you that that's kind of what you wanted to do?
Yes, I've known since 7th grade that I wanted to be an accountant. Like I said, I started with numbers because my dad was playing dominoes with his friends. So that's how I learned to count. And then I would always ask for flashcards for birthday gifts because, you know, that taught me multiplication and division just quickly. And then in the 7th grade, so my mom was not very good with managing money. Sure. And because my dad was a truck driver, you know, he needed her to kind of handle that piece. And so it got to a point to where I ended up taking over the family, managing the family finances. And that started around the 7th grade. At that time, that was fun for me. So I would each week would sit down with my dad. He'd say, I'm getting paid this amount. Then we'd break down the bills. I'd write the checks. And, you know, he'd take me to the different places. At that time, we were still writing checks and we were going into
That's a different era, by the way.
That's a different era.
It's a different era.
We were going into the light company to go pay the bill at the light company.
A different era, by the way.
Yeah, it wasn't online or any of that. And so that started for me in the 7th grade. So I started doing that for the family. And to this day, I am still my dad's accountant, manager, whatever you want to call it. I still pay all his bills. Yeah. We don't write checks anymore. I got him away from that. And I got him on auto pay. So, but yeah, so that journey started just, again, it really started when I started counting dominoes and numbers. I've loved it. I do love it. That's what I do as a career. And, you know, now I work with numbers every day. One of my side things is I'm a director of finance at the church that I attend. And so I'm working with numbers with them.
Sure.
And then with my financial coaching business, helping people win with their money, you know, more numbers. Numbers is what I do.
Numbers. So let's talk about being an accountant, right? And as you documented in the book, though, your journey, what you did figure out, though, is that this was a calling. You did very well at it, but you were also presented with an opportunity to stop it. So there was a all call. I mean, how did this even come about that you got an opportunity to leave your career and turn and parlay that into not only a different career of teaching language, but leaving the country and living somewhere else?
So back in 2018, I was laid off from my job as an accountant. And I was in a place where I was burned out and tired because of how work at this place was structured.
So not the job, but the people.
At both.
Really?
Yeah. Some of it was both. It was both. And I was in a place where I was questioning, well, maybe accounting is not for me.
Okay.
And so because I was in a place where thankfully I was debt free, and I knew that I was getting laid off, and I just needed a break. I did not want to immediately go back to another company. I wanted to really take a step back and kind of ask myself and decide, is this something I still want to do? Yes, I was, I loved it and was passionate about it. But let me take a step back. Let me step away and see what happens, see what else is out there, see if maybe I would be interested in something else. And so I had that opportunity, and, in a position to where I could go and move and live abroad. And so I was like, this is the perfect opportunity. It all makes sense. I don't have any bills. I don't have any responsibilities. I'm single. I don't have any children. If I'm going to do this is the time in my life now to do it. And so I did it. Yeah. I did it. And it was, all of my friends were like, you're absolutely crazy. You are nuts. They also know that I am the crazy friend that will say, hey, I'm moving out the country tomorrow, and I will go. And so I essentially did that. And while I was away, and let me back up. So I knew I wanted to live abroad. And I saw actually an opportunity. It was an advertisement that I saw that I started looking more into, but it was an advertisement that I saw on Instagram. This company that does international tours. Okay. They posted something about, hey, are you interested in living abroad, and do you have a valid passport? And at that time, there were no requirements for me to have any teacher certifications or anything like that. And so for where I was at that time in my life, seeing that, I was just like, this is perfect.
This is it.
This is it. This is what I've been looking for. It was an opportunity for me to, I still had health insurance, because that was one of the things that was important for me, is while I wanted to be able to travel the world, but I still wanted to be able to make some sort of income, have health insurance, be a responsible adult.
Be an adult.
And so this opportunity had all of that. And so this is the perfect fit.
Sure.
And so I took it, and I ended up in Shanghai, China.
Okay.
Teaching English as a second language.
More on that later. That's in the book as well. Okay, the journey, the Fievel Goes East, because it wasn't West, right? But you ever? Never mind. I want to talk about Fievel Goes West so bad with somebody. I kid you not. I just love it though. It's an odyssey. This is your odyssey that you documented. We're not going to talk about Fievel. We'll get there. Nonetheless, that's in the book. But the journey that you had, that you documented there, it talks about a little bit of a decision that you had to make as well, based on, granted, you mentioned that you don't have any children, but you do have a godson.
Yeah.
So a
whole bunch of godchildren. Yes.
But to take that back, let's not gloss over it. There are certain people who look at godchildren as a inherent responsibility. I do. And then also there are people who just take the title and say, okay, cool, thanks. Right. And that's not you.
No.
clearly based on how you've described this situation, which was a decision that was either I'm not leaving or I am leaving, but look what I'm leaving behind.
Right. Yes.
And I want to stop it there so that they can read the book.
Yes. Yeah. I almost did not make it to China because of, you'll have to read the book as to why I almost did not make it.
Right.
Yeah. Because.
But and then also a thing not to gloss over is that this is not a common situation.
Right.
It is rare. And I've seen it with my own eyes, and so is she. It is rare that you see individuals with a year-round tan walking around in mainland and or subjunct areas of China. It is extremely rare. And when you do see it, quite honestly, it's because of the migration patterns of continental Africa, as opposed to African Americans that are taking opportunities. Usually the separation is that we would be there on business as opposed to others coming in to look for work, right? And doing an anchor program and things like that. It's just not the situation. But we are in such a minority at that location that it is met with a little bit of unique interactions that we will talk about in our next segment. However, I'm glad that you documented it this way in the book. Then COVID happens. I mean, that's no spoiler to that.
Right.
Because your timeline of you being in Shanghai was 2020?
It was 2019 leading into 2020.
2019 leading into 2020, which is interesting when you think about it, though, because the onset of COVID as it hit America was more of a 2020 conversation.
Yes.
But you were there in the 2019 onset, which means you were kind of on the leading edge of what this pandemic item was.
Right. And coming back and having to abruptly come back. And
Sure.
some of my belongings are still in China today. That was part of my travel journey, and that's a fun story for me to tell, that whole journey.
So within the contents of the book, you have 3 essential segments, like we said before, which is essentially your origin story. And then you also talk about the career path you chose. And then essentially the opportunity to travel, right? Which I believe is a special testimony based on what is rare within our community, number one. I'll also give you some highlights too. Your origin story is unique and I related to it, and I appreciate you being able to share it. And I'm sure now that you've received your feedback that other people are as well. Additionally, I find it extremely rare that I can ever meet a person of color who has gone to school and always wanted to be the same thing that they are right now. That's a dreamscape in most instances. So I applaud you for that. And then third, tertiary, big word, $5 words on Saturday, by the way. The fact that you did something that is very unique to us as a people, to be not to travel. Traveling is fine. Where you went and what you experienced in that process, which again, a lot of this is described in her book. And that's why, we of course want to highlight that on the platform, but we also want to give you just enough to make you interested. If you want to know about what this small town girl decided to do in order to become much more than what she was statistically destined to become, you should read this book. If you want to understand what it's like for an experience of a person of color in a foreign country that is very rarely seen someone like us, you should get this book. If you want to know what it is like to take the journey of knowing that this destination isn't going to stop here, that there is more purpose to be found within the struggle that you're enduring, you should buy this book. This Means More. It's Bigger Than Me, Nina Evans. Where can you find this book?
You can find this book on my website, which is www.ninaevansllc.com. You can find it on Amazon book and the ebook. You can find the on Barnes and Noble's Nook. You can find it on Apple Books as well.
So Nina Evans as a author is one thing. Nina Evans as a financial coach is another. Now, granted, leading this in, always wanting to do numbers, understanding that that was effectively a calling, going to school for it, right? You have a bachelor's in accounting. Did you say you had a master's?
I do have an MBA with an emphasis in accounting.
Look at the level of education in this room right now. Okay. It's eclipsing at this point. And then additionally, you offer a financial coaching service based on you, as you mentioned before, becoming debt free.
Yes.
So not only is the financial coaching based on an education of how to do numbers, right? So which you do offer that service to others, but you have a journey that's documented. And usually within, administrative and facilitations, we call it proof of concept. Your proof of concept is that I've been debt free for X amount of years, and here's how. You did describe this in the book, but there was also aspects of this that you offer for your clients when you discuss it. So let's talk about your financial coaching as an offering, as a service offering to the people.
Yep. So I offer financial coaching services to help people win with their money. So to get on a budget and to get out of debt. While people think, right, that managing your money is all about the numbers, I went to school for accounting and I still ended up in debt. So it is not about the numbers. Let me take that back. A piece of it is about the numbers, but it is more about your behavior with money. And I had bad behavior. It did not matter how much I knew numbers. My behavior with spending was awful. And I detail that, and I mentioned some of that in the book. And I, being on my own journey, looking up and finding myself in an overwhelming amount of debt that I was fully responsible for. I couldn't say that my kids needed shoes and I had to go make ends meet that way. That wasn't my story. I just was an emotional shopper. I used it to, when I was sad, I would shop and it would make me feel good in the moment. But then that moment only lasted for so long and then it went away. And so I found myself shopping again to keep myself busy, to fulfill this, give myself a false sense of comfort. And then that, taking a look back, that I found myself in just a world of mess because I started to really take a look at, I'm making great money and yet I have nothing to show for it. I have a whole bunch of clothes in my closet, but I don't have anything else. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I'm spending all of my money paying creditors and paying credit card balances and paying car notes, and I have nothing to show for it. And so I got to a point to where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired of paying other people. And I was like, I have to do something about this. I do not want to live this way. I do not see myself struggling, or I don't want to struggle. I want peace of mind. I want financial freedom. And so I had to put myself on a journey to get there.
Sure. That
journey entailed me, number one, to tell myself no, to find other avenues to channel my energy when I was, if I was sad, right? I had to put away the credit cards. I had to find other ways in order to manage that. I had to hold myself accountable because, again, the mess, I was the one in charge of creating the mess. And so I was going to be the one in charge of cleaning it up.
Okay.
And so I want to, and the whole goal for my financial coaching is to help people find financial freedom. We do not have to live paycheck to paycheck. We do not have to struggle. Life changes. You can make different decisions about your life when you're not worried about finances. Mm-hmm. And I want people to experience that freedom. And it's less about money and it's more about freedom for me. Sure. I want to see my people win. I want to see people at peace, and to have peace of mind and to not be worried about where the next dollar is going to come from, and it's all about our behavior with money. Mm-hmm. So there are many avenues that we can take in order to get more money, but the same way it takes, energy for you the same way you manage $1,000 is the same way you're going to manage 100,000, same way you're going to manage, 100 million, right? If you can't manage 1,000, then you can't manage more.
Sure. And I agree with that. So I think discipline is incredibly important when it comes down to your financial literacy as well as your financial responsibilities. And yeah, so your story wasn't as though there were necessities outside of your own personal wants that took you into debt, right? Would you consider school an additional portion of your debt?
So at one point I did for grad school, I did have, I did take out some loans. I use loans as a strategy to help pay off debt.
Okay.
That's what I did because I ended up being reimbursed from my employer for my grad school. So my undergrad was paid for through volleyball scholarship. So I did not have to take out student loans in undergrad. Thankfully, very grateful for that. And then for grad school, I had to take out student loan and then I was reimbursed by my employer. But I used that as a strategy to pay off credit cards, right, and to lower my interest rate. And so I kind of shifted the debt from credit card debt to student loan debt.
Okay. But that is interesting, though. Now, I went through college twice without ever accruing a student loan, although I paid off tuition based on either if I had the cash for it or I had a credit card, right? I consider that an investment because I am responsible with the money, right? So I consider it an investment. So whatever it is that I accrued, either on a credit card or if I just depleted the bank account at the time for college, I knew in the long game, the goal was to get a career and or a salary that was going to be able to have me replenish or pay that off. So I agree with you in the strategy. You parlayed one to pay off the other because you were still actually getting your financial freedom at the time you were becoming or getting your
MBA.
MBA, pardon me, MBA.
Yes.
But also, within what we were talking about off mic and previously is that you did this in an aspect of almost like atonement because the way that you paid off your debt. And we talked about debt consolidation as an option to which it can be an option. However, what you chose to do was to work more.
Yes.
Take on an additional job so that you could, as you mentioned, feel the payback for each one of those pieces of debt that you owned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was important for me to pay back every single dollar that I had borrowed. The mess that I was created, I told myself, you're responsible for cleaning up every single cent of that. And so I was very adamant about, I wasn't, I could have called a credit card creditor and settled with them and, can I give you $2,000 say, and then you wipe out the rest of the day. I could have done that, but I wanted to feel what it was like to have to pay back every single dollar. So I knew that I would never put myself in that situation again because I know what it feels like. Mm-hmm. I know what it feels like to have to work 3 jobs and you have one job that is paying you well and you're still having to work 2 side hustles to pay off debt.
Sure.
And so it was important for me to feel that, like I said, so I would never put myself back in that situation. Sure. And so I did that. I did what I had to do, right? Which was working the 3 jobs and then, getting to a place to where I can eventually, knock that down back to 1. But I wanted to be intentional about that.
So for the sake of numbers, since you're a number lady, how within a figure, not a specific amount, but within a figure of how much debt you were in at the time you started your let me knock this down. What are we talking about? 6 figures, mid 6, high 6, low 6?
Low 6 figures.
Low 6 figures of debt. And how long did it take for you to knock that down to being debt free?
2 years, but then I was not serious, and so I got off track.
Within the 2 years?
After the 2 years, I was paying off debt, and then within, after that, I was just like, I'm working a lot. Like, let me enjoy it. Let me enjoy my life. And so I kind of slacked off of paying off debt. And then once I got serious about it again, it took me an additional 3. I was actively paying things down and being intentional about it. And then I did that for a good 2 years. And then I had a period where I was just like,
regressed. And then you got strict for 3.
Yes. And then I got very strict, very disciplined, very serious, like that we're going to do this and we're not carrying another debt forward. We're paying this off. And so that was, so once I got serious, it took 3 years.
As a sellable item, you have a process that actually can take someone from $50,000 to $75,000 of debt down to zero. That's kind of where I was trying to lead us to. That was the river that I was trying to get us to drink from. You're welcome. But yes, but again, as an understanding, because quite honestly, if you offer a service, anybody should say, well, that's fine. I'm glad you offer the service. Why should I buy into it from you? There's other people who do. There's tons of people on Instagram talking about their credit repair people. Now, I think we both know what that means.
Right.
They don't. So to understand the avenues that you have is one thing. To understand why those avenues exist and what benefit they can be for you based on your current situation is important. An option like this is available, and this is through Nina Evans, LLC.
Yes.
Well, how can they reach you for this?
So you can go to my website, www.ninaevansllc. You can find me on social media, all social media platforms at Nina Evans LLC. And what I do is I customize it for each client, because it's not the same approach is not going to work for everybody. And so there's not just one straight way. There's not one right way. And so what I do is take the time to get to know my clients, get to know what their financial goals are. And then we develop a roadmap together on how to get there and what will work for the client, because at the end of the day, it's their life and their income. And so we're going to develop a roadmap together on how we can get you where you want to go so that you can reach your financial goals and achieve financial freedom.
I pattern this very similarly to my fitness business journey, not necessarily my journey through it, but it is about a discipline, number one. Number two, you as an entity giving a service to other people means that you are the poster child at that point for what the success line could be. The pot of gold is you.
Right.
Would you like to get there? Well, here is how we did it, right? And it only benefits you if you stay disciplined in order to get to that point.
Yes, absolutely.
If you don't, makes sense. That's life. But the process is the process, and what worked for you is the thing that you're selling. So that's essentially your sham wow.
Yes. And so that's what I do with my clients. We sit down and I actually show you on paper, this is how you're going to get there. This is how you can get there. And these are the steps that you need to follow.
An a la carte or bespoke service in order for you to find financial freedom is important, because otherwise you're just selling the concept. Right. You're not selling a concept. You're actually selling a service, because you're along the journey with them.
Yes.
And as you made mention, I just want to make sure that people understand it, that when you contact her, it's not going to be a select from these options. It is a consultation that leads into a complete program.
Yes.
It's a program. I think that's beautiful, though. It's for your clientele base. You did say that you wanted your people to win. I think that's important that the message is continuing along with that. And again, you can find that through your website. All right. So with the documentation of going into Shanghai, we'll consider that the more poignant part of your travel life, where you've had a lot of impact, you've had a lot of information, that you processed being out in that countryside, that it was just very unique to you. You did document it in the book. But the things that we're going to talk about now in this particular section is about the overarching experience of being there. Now, Shanghai, mainland China, is unique and very different from, let's say, Hong Kong, for argument's sake. Right now, Hong Kong is a special administrative region of China, so it's not really even China by that regard. But I was in Beijing too, and I understand that Shanghai and Beijing aren't really socially the same, right? Very similar though, but just not like south of China going into Hong Kong. But before I dive into that, is that the furthest that you had traveled before going to China? What was the furthest that you traveled to?
That would be Cape Town, South Africa.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So like halfway there.
Halfway there.
Okay. Got you. So before we go into China in itself, let's dive into some other places. Okay. Let's start from the Western Hemisphere. So where within North America had you been?
Mexico.
Mexico.
Yeah, Mexico and Dominican Republic.
Okay. Very nice, very tropical.
Yes.
Same language, right?
Yeah, same language. Yep. Yes. Now, Dominican Republic was the first place where I had some travel issues, I'll say, because I got trapped in Dominican Republic for an extra week.
For a storm?
Yes, Hurricane Irene that year. Yep.
Okay. I was about to say, well, like, what other reason, unless jail, like, what other reason could you have been trapped there? Okay. All right. So, okay, that's the Dominican Republic. I always liked, and I'm a bit of a history buff, but I've always enjoyed looking at the, you can look at history just by looking at people, right? So, like, you can see that Mexico clearly is about a certain amount of Spanish, like, colonialism that took place within the indigenous people. Dominican Republic ain't the same.
Right.
Has got a lot to do with the slave trade, baby. Like that's a little different, right? Even though the colonialism still has its impact there. And okay, so the Dominican Republic being unique, Mexico. Did you ever go to South America?
No, have not been to South America.
Do you want to go?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where would you like to try to go? South America?
I want to go everywhere. I have a goal of going to every to every country.
All right. Why not?
Possible. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. So South America untouched. So then outside of Western Hemisphere, you went to South Africa. Did you go to Europe yet?
I have not been to Europe.
Okay.
That is on my bucket list.
When you flew to South Africa, how did you fly? Where's your transition point?
I went from Houston to Dubai, and Dubai to directly to Cape Town. So 16 hours because I flew Emirates. So had to go through Dubai. 16 hours to Dubai, and then another 9 from Dubai to Cape Town.
Gotcha.
Both straight flights.
How long was your layover in Dubai?
8 hours.
Oh, so you really haven't seen Dubai though?
No, not at all, because it was also like I arrived at 1 a.m. and I was leaving, early the next morning. So it was get to the hotel, try to sleep for a little bit, and then get back to the airport.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. There's a lot of travel. Well, let's make this a pre-COVID statement, right? But there was a lot of travel of like black travel to Dubai, and people really were showing out. They were tearing it up. Now, pardon me. There's some things about those pictures that you see that don't let the smooth taste fool you. That ain't Dubai. Like, you're in a hotel.
Yeah.
You're not outside acting that way. You'll go to jail for about 50 nights. Like, you got to be careful with Dubai because it's still theologically based, right? In terms of how the government works. Right. But ideally, though, the pictures in Dubai always looked really, really nice. I've been twice. It's just to be there on a layover, you have to be intentional about that layover, so that you really got to space that out.
Right.
And also, often with the lines that you get with the selections that you can have through Emirates or Singapore Airlines and things like that, you don't get that option.
Right.
Fair enough. So then, you hadn't been to Europe. You went to South Africa. Did you go anywhere else within the continent of Africa?
No. I was I was only in Cape Town that entire time. Yes.
Got you. Okay. So in Cape Town, the way I understood it is that you were there on effectively a mission-based trip.
Yes, mission.
But it wasn't just all mission.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did you do there?
So it was leisure and missions based. So we did things like hiked up Lion's Head Mountain that took us almost 2 hours to get up there. And which I love that kind of stuff. I love hiking. And so that journey, I'm always looking at the deeper side of things too, to say, wow, like the process of getting up Lion's Head was tough. It was rugged. It was hard. But once I got on the mountain and to see the view of Cape Town, on top of the mountain was breathtaking. So that journey was absolutely worth it. So we did a lot of leisure stuff, just exploring the city. And then we did the missions work where we partnered with Hillsong Church, who is big on an international level, very, very big congregation. And so we partnered with them and we did missions work with, those lower income communities. And so we specifically did work with it was a home that, and it was a school that housed disabled students. And so to see the kids who, although they had disabilities and in wheelchairs, and one young lady, I remember she didn't have any legs, and so she kind of scooted around. She wasn't in a wheelchair, but she got around, just scooting around. But those kids had so much vision. Yeah. They dreamed of being doctors and lawyers and everything else. So despite their disability, they dreamed. So we got to do vision boards with them. And just spend time nurturing them and loving on them. And, we took them to see Black Panther. We took a movie theater it was about 150 kids to see Black Panther when it first came out.
Yeah.
That was one of the coolest experiences.
Side note. Now that you mentioned that, I'd love to get your opinion about it. This is probably going to take us into a deep dive, so I'll throttle back my intensity. But I heard recently someone call the Black Panther as a movie pandering to our community, and I couldn't disagree more, because it's not often that you see something like that. Now, I think that Disney knew what they were doing when it comes down to creating something like that, but I mean, clearly it was a comic book character from the 60s up until now. It had never been highlighted this way. I've heard a lot of comparisons. I don't, for what it did though, in terms of a pop culture moment, for what that movie did, and also rest in peace Chadwick Boseman,
right.
But for what it did as a pop culture moment, you can never, in my opinion, slight it by calling it, oh, they took from The Lion King, or, oh, that was just pandering. Well, there's been pandering before, but did you ever see everyone embrace something like that before?
Right.
That was a moment. So when you said that you took the children to go see Black Panther, I clearly understand that to be an inspirational exploit, that you took them there to show them that this is something that, A, you hadn't seen before, but B, this is what you could be.
Right. Yes.
And if that didn't exist, then it wouldn't be an example that you can give them.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and the kids, I think, saw it as there's someone that I can look at on TV who looks like me. And this gives me hope. This gives me encouragement that
President Obama.
That I could do that I can do something with my life, and I can go somewhere and I could inspire other people.
Sure.
And so that's the part that I love to see, of course.
I think that's amazing. The fact of what you did, that what you talked about South Africa, and I'm glad we talked about that first. Similarly, I wasn't there on a mission trip, but it was something that I experienced, is that when I went to Thailand, I had never seen poverty like that. Mm-hmm. Like, it was, heartbreaking. Yeah. Like, I'm in an open marketplace, like, holding back tears. It's just like, and I already feel as though the places I've been to, I barely deserve them. I'm very thankful, but for me to do that is like mind blowing to me. So I really soaked it in. Half of my travels are kind of like history lessons. I don't stay on resorts and stuff like that. I just get in the thing, and try to understand what's happening at a micro level, right? But to you, South Africa.
Yep.
Do I understand that did you go to Jerusalem or did you go to Jordan?
I went to Jerusalem.
Okay.
So I've been to Israel. We went to Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Nazareth. Yeah. So we had I went on it. So that particular trip was, it was a tour. Sure. So went across and went, as they call it, walking in the path of Jesus, and many of the different places that you read in the Bible. We went to visit those places. So that trip was a beautiful experience as well. Very, and so I'm a Bible reader, love reading the Bible. So I was able to connect some of the places that you read about, and then now being there in person, standing on it, was incredible experience. You can't
discount that.
Yeah,
that's proof of concept in itself. It's like, no, I read about this. Now I'm here.
Right.
Did you? I have never been. So please forgive my ignorance. Is the Dead Sea, were you out by the Dead Sea?
We did go to the Dead Sea. Yep.
See, I'm not that ignorant after all. Okay. so you're out by the Dead Sea. Did you float in it?
I did not.
Could you have floated in it, though?
Yes.
Why didn't you?
Because I didn't want to get my hair wet. I did get in it, though.
Okay. All right. Cool. Fine. Wow. All right. How long in South Africa? How long in Israel?
Both were a week, so
Not bad.
7 days. Yeah, 7 days in Cape Town, and then 7 days touring Jerusalem.
Not bad. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of patterning this to as a migratory conversation, right? So we started off in Mexico, hit the DR. Now you're in South Africa. Now you went to effectively the Middle East. Did you go anywhere before you hit China after that?
No.
Now, just for calendar dates, in the stint of when did Black Panther come out? 2017.
I went to South Africa in March 2018.
Okay, 2018. And then you went to Israel after that.
I went to Israel after that.
So
I went to Israel October 2018.
So March, October, boom, boom, same year.
Yep, same
Different
year.
seasons, same year.
Yep.
And then it took you, another opportunity clearly took you into Shanghai, mainland China in 2019.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm curious, because I have a very similar experience. I'm curious your take on being Black in China.
Ooh, that was quite the experience. I definitely struggled with number one, adjusting to a lot of the cultural differences, and number two, I was not used to. Again, we talked about earlier. I'm very much an introvert. I like my space, and China is very opposite of that. When you are on the subway, you are literally shoulder to shoulder, people cramming, and every single ounce of space that there is, they feel. Yeah. They will try to fill. So imagine being on an elevator that will fit 6 people, and then over there it's going to be 12, maybe 15 people on the elevator.
I effectively used to call that bumping genitals, but yes, go ahead.
So it was quite the experience in adjusting to that, and it was adjusting to, right, I understand that I look different. I am also tall, and I'm not your, size 2 girl either. And so I would have people who I could be at one time I was at a kiosk ordering at McDonald's, and I just feel a tug on the back of my hair, like somebody pulling my hair, and I turn around and it's an older woman, and she was curious about my hair, so she just grabbed it, she touched it, she pulled on it, and while I understand that you are curious, like, you can't just pull my hair like that. You can't just. So there were a lot of moments where it was difficult, in that I was followed in stores, going to the mall. I'm just in the stores looking, shopping as the average person, right? And I would be followed in the store, thinking, you're right. Obviously, you could tell that they were trying to make sure that I wouldn't steal anything or whatever that assumption is that they had about me. I could feel all of that, though.
Sure.
And so that was difficult. It was, I could never walk to the bus stop to catch the bus to get to work without somebody taking out their camera and taking a picture. Yeah. Or some people would literally walk up to me and just not ask me, hey, do you mind taking a picture? They would just walk up with their camera out, snap the picture, and then walk off.
Sure.
And so it was quite the experience. It was, like I said, I had several difficult moments, being there. In that, and then even at work, the struggle at work was because I am darker skinned, to do community facing events, they would only choose either the local teachers or someone who was very, very, very light skinned, or those who were white. They would not choose any of the darker skinned Black people in order to do community facing events.
Not to stop the flow. How many Black people were with you?
In my school, this is unusual, but there were 5 of us, and that was unusual.
As a high number?
As a high number,
5.
Yeah, that was high. Yeah. So out of a staff of maybe 25 people, 5 of us were Black, and a fifth, and that was a high number. That was unusual.
All American?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. And I'm providing context, right? Mm-hmm. But the reason why I'm asking those is because, clearly you could get a English African or English person of African descent to be there to do the same thing that you would be doing
Right.
because you're teaching English. So anyone who speaks fluent English, regardless black, brown, white, or candy apple red, could be able to do so. But I was
Yes,
just curious
absolutely.
about your current outline or the layout, excuse me, of their teachers. All African American, but only 5 of you out of 25 total.
Right.
Just context. Gotcha.
Yes. Yes.
So I think it's also important to highlight something. And by no means is it crediting where you were or trying to give an understanding of why they did what they did. I want everyone else to understand because I don't think there's enough of us who have gone out there.
Right.
Okay. So you are speaking about Shanghai, China, which is the second, we'll call it the second city in terms of commerce and business in mainland China. Beijing being the first, Shanghai being the second. You should probably also know that China doesn't really even have that many cities.
Right.
When it like a collective first world complex city, there's like 4, right? There's Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, was the Shenzhen region, but there's like one more.
There's Hangzhou.
Hangzhou, yeah. And I think there's one like a little further north, right? So for the sake of you being there, in a commerce hub, like that's an economic, like burgeoning society, they still aren't used to seeing people like you.
Right. Right.
So you being there on business, how long were you there, by the way? I mean, I know COVID shut it down, but
9 months total.
9 months total. So you spent 9 months in an area that was not used to seeing people of color.
Right.
You were learning the language, but you didn't become conversationally fluent in.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Was it Mandarin or Cantonese?
Mandarin.
Mandarin. All right. So you were learning Mandarin, couldn't communicate effectively with the group, and saw how they interacted with seeing someone like you
Yes.
in the open. See, China isn't built that way. It's not like the Philippines.
There-
Like
yeah,
you're not in
at
a
all.
compound. You're outside.
Yes.
It's important. Again, for context, it's important for people to understand what that is.
Right.
Because when
right.
someone says they want to go to China, like mainland, I always ask them, mainland or where? Like, where are you trying to
Right.
go?
Yeah.
You know, because you go over there, you call it a socialist republic all you want to. That is a communist
Yes.
country.
Yep. Absolutely.
They have totally different rule sets.
Totally different rules. And I'll never forget, it was my first day in the classroom. I was shadowing an experienced teacher. And so I would just walk in the classroom. I sat in the back, and when the kids started coming in, there was a little girl who walked up to me and she picked up my hand. She grabbed my hand and she tried to see if she could rub the color off.
Just not
She
used to
took her
seeing
finger.
you.
Yeah. And that really, in that moment, it really hit me. Like, they are really not
Exposed.
They're not exposed at all. And so I try to be at times to be understanding of, I don't think that they were doing anything to be rude or mean or disrespectful. They really were curious because
Sure.
they had not seen anyone who looked like me before.
It's important to highlight these things because, okay, children learn how to be racist. And I'm not saying that this is an example of racism. I'm saying it's an example of underexposure for
Right.
sure.
Yes.
And it's also circumstances that are beyond their control because how many African Americans go to China for one reason or another in large population, in large droves. Secondly, for the group of people that do look like us, that do come there, they're coming there for a totally different reason than why we're there. Right. So there's an opinion that they would have because we look like everybody else. We're African until proven otherwise.
Right.
Continental African is the prejudice that comes along with that. I had to learn that too.
Right.
I didn't understand why I was being received in a certain way. Like, I'm in a suit, I have a suitcase, I speak very well, blah, blah, blah. But they don't see all that because they haven't talked to me yet.
Right.
And I'm using they as the royal they, because I can tell you this on 3 separate continents that I've gone through the same thing. So it's like they just don't understand it until they engage with you because
Right.
they already have a predisposition about, I know who you are.
Right.
And now I have to work that much harder to prove to you that I'm not.
Yes.
So I relate to you in that being exhausting from a
Yes.
social level. Because I think you told me off mic that you were, I was just done. Like I was
done. I was, oh my gosh. I was like, get me out of here. And so part of the travel, I did quite a bit of traveling while I was in China, and I was intentional about going to places outside of China
Sure.
because I needed to get a break. I
Gave you
needed
such a bad taste.
to just feel normal for just a second.
All right. So then where did you go?
So I went to, I've been to Phuket. I went to Phuket while I was there.
Oh, Phuket.
Yes,
What's
I love
up? Saudi crab. Kampong Kap.
love that. I went to Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. I went to Singapore, which out of all the places, I think I probably enjoyed Singapore the most.
You did?
I did. I mean, well, so I'm a beach. Okay. When it comes to beaches, of course, Thailand, right? Nobody can.
Can't top. Well, you probably can because you went to the other beach.
I did, but it still wasn't.
Okay.
Still wasn't Thailand. Still wasn't, yeah.
Thailand's up there.
I loved it. Definitely would go back. I did go to Sanya, China, which is the Hawaii. They call it the Hawaii of China.
Okay.
Yeah, and a few other places. But it was, number one, the travel, right, while you're there and being able to, so obviously being in China made it super easy in order to get to all of these different places. It was very reasonable priced, considering US dollar. And so I was able to go to, I believe it was about 7 different places while I was there in the 9 months.
And as you mentioned, it was important for you to get out of the area that wasn't really benefiting you.
Right.
But again, just for the sake of just clarification, you weren't there for vacation in the first place.
Right.
But you were given the opportunity to take vacations while there. Very similar to me.
Yep.
I was there for work. I was in the special administrative region in a high traffic and commerce area. Hong Kong, by comparison to Shanghai, is you're going to see a larger group of people who just aren't from there. Right. But again, it's a different purpose for being in Hong Kong because they have a banking system there that works internationally. The dollar is tied to, the U.S. dollar. The Chinese dollar is not tied to the U.S. dollar,
right,
even though they own 45% of our debt. Nonetheless, I think the reason why I was really trying to get this portion of it covered with you is because I don't believe that there's anyone within my arm's reach that has had the same experiences that I had being out there. My mainland China experience is very similar to yours.
Yeah.
And I was 600 miles different from you. Like I was, Shanghai is pretty far, right? But for those who are listening, if you wanted to go to mainland China, Beijing would be the place to go to.
Right.
Because the access to the Great Wall of China would be there.
Right.
And you still need a visa, and that's still really hard to get.
It is still and now that we no longer have the consulate here in Houston,
Yep.
It makes it even harder for this part of the region to get that.
So if you want to go to China, you need to start doing your research now for next year's trip. I'm just take it from me. It ain't easy to do.
I think the one thing that I want to mention to people is, and why I really fell in love with traveling is when I went to Cape Town, South Africa, that trip opened my mind to the possibility to never-ending possibilities that I didn't even know were possible. And so China does not come about if I don't go to Cape Town.
I love that you said that. Yeah.
And so China's not even a thought in my mind, but me going to Cape Town really opened my mind to say, there are numerous possibilities that are out here. They may not all be within the US. They could be in another country.
Right.
And so that opened my mind to say, what else is out there?
Sure.
And so that's when I really started to seek opportunities outside of the United States. And although I did have to come back abruptly from China, I absolutely would go abroad and live abroad again. Now, would choose a different place. But the possibilities to know that it's possible for this small town girl who, when I was little, had never even been to the big city, to move to a big city, to eventually, I've lived in a few different places in the United States and then been able to travel outside of the country, to just say that all of that was possible for this little girl who didn't know, but had I had a vision when I was younger that I would just see the world. I just wanted to see the world.
You got a goal.
Yeah, I had a goal. And so I've stuck with that. And that is still my goal, even as an adult, is to see the world, to see what else is out there, to open my mind to new things, to new possibilities, to just see, because anything is possible.
Yeah.
And it's more than what we can see, in our immediate circle with our immediate eyes, that only goes so far.
True.
But when you can see beyond, if you can see beyond what you can see, then there's just so many possibilities. And so travel has done that for me. That's why I love it. And I'm at a place now where I'm like, I need it. I am trying to think, I turn 40 next year, so I'm like, where am I going for my birthday? I do not want to be in the United States. I want to, maybe go to Greece or Europe.
I think you should see Europe.
Yeah.
I think you should see Europe, honestly.
Yeah. So travel is amazing.
You said you wanted to go to Greece. I'm assuming Santorini.
Mm-hmm.
I'll challenge you to look in some other areas.
Okay.
Okay. And so we're talking about Europe. I agree with, and I don't think people mention it this way, I think they're pleasantly surprised about Greece that it ends up being economically comparable to central United States. Because, there's a California price for everything, and then there's a New York price for everything.
Yes.
And Greece actually is kind of more like a central North American Texas kind of pricing, which I think is cool. Texas and Atlanta have a very similar price branch in terms of what you will expend, or what you'll spend for tourism. But everyone's been to Santorini. Right. Cappadocia is really nice, right? And then the beaches are there too. But outside of Greece, a place that is as economically similar is Spain. Real nice.
Yeah.
Real nice. I mean, Spain is, but the cost of enjoying yourself there is very similar to how you live right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's important when you talk about vacations.
Right.
Because if you're going to Dubai, here's my camera.
Ready to be paid.
Bring your wallet. Okay. If you're going to Dubai, bring the cash, because they're not joking out there. You can't even negotiate rates of stuff in Dubai. You have to do that in Jumeirah. Like, it's a whole different city, 20 minutes down.
Wow.
Let me know where you want to go. I'll give you what I know. Spain, yes. Clearly, you want to see London.
Right.
I would probably stay away from Germany if I were you. I had my own experiences. Amsterdam is always Amsterdam. But I think for the sake of going there, you can go there for 3 reasons. And I think you could see all of that before the sun goes down.
Right.
And then after that, you can go somewhere else. There's a couple of different places in Europe, but I think Europe would be good for you. Like, just personality-wise, just my hot take. I think you'd enjoy it.
Okay.
I think you would enjoy it.
Definitely gonna look into that.
You want to do something totally different, go to Croatia.
Right.
Or Italy. But
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's leave the door open. I would like to be continue this. It was a pleasure talking to you because we just really hadn't had a chance to do this. But I wanted to make sure we did justice in covering the areas that I think were germane to your business model, as well as to the message that you want to extend to people, which is A, buy the book. Okay.
Right.
B, listen or read into that and understand the stories that are told. There are for you expressing your growth, you purging to a degree, but then also giving some hope for others to do some self-reflection.
Right.
You got a financial service that you offer as well. They know how to get to you also. You can repeat that in a moment. And then additionally, something about travel. I was appreciating the segment that we could talk about, but the understanding of being different in those areas is important. And I think it's at least let this podcast be a message of some level of expectation for those who are traveling to those areas, because you may not see what you think you're going to see.
Yes. And the one thing that I want to make sure that I mention is you cannot be in another country and think like an American.
Hey,
you cannot.
Welcome to their world.
You have to. It's their world, and we're there, and so you have to as a guest, and so you cannot think and cannot expect that it is going to be like America's. You will not get that.
May not even talk to you in English. And they know it.
And they know it.
They just don't, right? No, I think that's important. That's important. And we can talk about this a lot more, actually, if you want to do an extended travel talk. We can hook that up. So let's close out. This has been Qualify the Podcast. Again, you can find us on all streaming platforms as well as YouTube. This video will be available there as well. You can like and subscribe. You can leave anything in the comments. I am looking for them. First-time listeners, thank you for your ears. Last time listeners, thank you for coming. Nina, can you please tell them where to find you?
Yes, you can find me on my website, www.ninaevansllc. That is also where you can find my book. You can find my book on Amazon, on Barnes & Nobles, and on Apple Books. And you can follow me on social media at Nina Evans LLC.
This Means More, It's Bigger Than Me by Nina Evans. Check this book out. It is a very compelling read. It's a good story. This is a real big thing, and I'm thankful for you to be a part of my platform. I really appreciate you coming by.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you guys for listening.